Welcome to the Couch Scouts Podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
All right, Mike, welcome in, man. Thank you for doing this. We're excited to hear your thoughts on the 2025 Senior Bowl. Why don't you start? Just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your work with Dynasty Dogs and where they can find you.
All right, so my name is Mike Anthony. I've been doing the podcast, The Dynasty Dogs, for about two and a half years now with my best friend, Rich. We've known each other since the third grade. Really just like a good back and forth between the both of us because it's nonstop fighting most of the time. I also do articles for the website Toilets and Titles. You can find me on there as well. I should mention the podcast is available everywhere podcasts are available. All the names I can't think of outside of Spotify and Apple. That's where you can find everything I'm doing right now.
Yeah, so Dynasty Dogs, DOG. Y'all search it. Definitely give it a listen. Mike's a great guy. Mike is also a member of our Discord and on our site at Couch Scouts. So he's a friend of the show for sure. And you were at the Senior Bowl this week. Mm-hmm. So we got a request in our Discord to cover a little Senior Bowl recap this week on the show. And I thought, well, instead of pretending like I know what I'm talking about, let's bring in somebody who was actually down there. And so definitely appreciate your time. Let me give a little bit of preface before we jump into this. I think it's important with the Senior Bowl, one, to know what is it and why do we care? And so it's basically an all-star game at the end of the college football season for a lot of the standout seniors, hence the name Senior Bowl, although now they invite some early declared juniors to the game as well. And what's exciting about it is not the actual game itself, because the game itself, these guys are getting limited reps. It's kind of a, they're trying not to get hurt. It's an all-star game format, similar to, what you might think of like Pro Bowl or NBA All-Star game. They're maybe not playing full out in the game on the weekend. But I think the really exciting part and the relevant part for Dynasty players is the practices all week long, because these are guys who are considered NFL prospects. A lot of them are from small schools playing smaller competition, and they all get on the same level playing field against other NFL prospects. And there's a ton of scouts there checking the whole thing out. It's a great opportunity to either improve or maybe hurt your draft stock. And these guys are going up against each other in drills and practice reps all week long. So that's what we pay attention to. I'll also say you got to be a little bit careful as far as don't throw out everything you know about a player just because of Senior Bowl week, right? So I'll give an example last year of somebody that stood out who also looked great on their college tape, and Senior Bowl just kind of cemented good draft capital for them, and that's Ladd McConkey. That's a great example of what to pay attention to in the Super Bowl, or Senior Bowl, rather. I would say on the flip side, you had a guy, Roman Wilson, last year, who was a Senior Bowl standout. Everybody was raving about Roman Wilson and how he looked in practice. But the college tape, for me at least, was super underwhelming. I was not interested in Roman Wilson, even after all the buzz he got from Senior Bowl week. And that turned out to be a good fade. I mean, I guess you could say he was injured and maybe he still could break out, but I don't think so. So just be careful. Like, if what you're seeing on tape consistently is not that impressive to you, don't overreact to a good Senior Bowl week. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, 110%. A guy I liked going into the Senior Bowl last year and had a decent Senior Bowl was Malachi Corley. His Senior Bowl kind of ingrained everything that I was hoping for, and then it just didn't translate to the NFL. You mentioned Roman Wilson, a guy whose film I didn't like at all. And then when I only got to see a brief, maybe half hour, 45 minutes of him last year because my plane got in late. And then he was gone after the first day, and everybody was ranting and raving. I was like, oh, I don't know about that one. There's probably a few guys in this class that uh, did that for themselves this week, and I'm sure we'll kind of talk about that slightly.
Yeah, for sure. So we're gonna go position by position here. We'll start with quarterbacks and then running backs. We'll take a quick break, then we'll hit wide receivers and tight ends. And we'll start with the quarterbacks. Who stood out to you in a positive way this week down in Mobile, Mike?
Um, really nobody. Nobody really separated themselves. Like I was really hopeful for Jackson Dart, and I will say he was probably the best of the quarterback room. But again, it was kind of like he was a mixed bag. It wasn't anything exciting. He kind of did exactly what we thought he was going to do. And at Ole Miss, throw the open wide receiver. That's kind of all he did. One read, get the ball out in those 7-7, 11-on-11 drills. Um, I will give the dude from Canada, Taylor Elgarazm. I'm not sure how to
I have no idea.
I couldn't figure it out the whole week. I kind of just gave up because I felt like I was going to end up summoning Beetlejuice at one point if I kept saying it wrong. Um, I'll give him a lot of props, man. That arm is live, right? He's got a cannon. I will say he's got really good mobility as well, good NFL size. Um, Nino Brown, somebody you and I both know, really
Yeah,
good
great
dude. I
guy.
gotta shout him out. He noticed that his release was coming out a bit high. And then he noticed like the second day it started to change. So he started bringing down a little lower, which is good because you want to see them take the criticisms you have from day one and start fixing it day two and on. So that was something we like seeing. And again, the Canada, football league and coming down here to Senior Bowl um, has to be a big change.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, a little disappointing, but not that surprising to hear you say that nobody stood out too much. I thought it was, it's not a great quarterback class to begin with, and neither of the two that we think are first round picks in Sanders or Ward were down there. Anybody stand out in a negative way? Anybody maybe hurt their draft capital this week?
This one hurt my soul a little bit. Jalen Milroe. I like him. I like this film a little bit, not like to the point where he was like my quarterback one or anything like that. I'm not going to go that insane, but he has good mobility. Obviously, rushed for like 700 some odd yards, 20 some odd touchdowns on the ground. His arm strength, his arm velocity is there. You could see that down at the Senior Bowl, but the mechanics are bad. One thing I noted on film is that he's an all arm thrower. Like there's no kind of like hip motion or anything like that when the ball comes out. And I think that caused a lot of inaccuracies. Like he's missing running backs in the flat on one drills. He's sailing it. He missed Devin Neal on a perfect wheel route where he was wide open, sprinting and just overthrew him. And that's some of the things you notice again is he overthrows a lot of people, which I guess you would rather quarterbacks overthrow than underthrow, but he's definitely got to clean that up. He also really struggled with identifying pressure, especially coming from the edge. Man, if you can't clean that up, that's going to be a huge issue in the NFL. One thing getting mechanics cleaned up is, something somebody can work on, but not having your spidey senses tell you that an edge is just crushing your offensive line, you're going to get yourself in trouble.
All right, Mike, one more question for you on the quarterbacks. We haven't talked about this yet, but at Senior Bowl, you get official measurements, which is kind of a big deal, right? Like at certain positions in particular. I remember a couple years ago, Rashee Rice was a Senior Bowl guy, and he was listed at like 6'3" and 200 something by SMU. And so all year, whenever I would talk about him, I'd say he's this 6'3" prospect. And then he came in at the Senior Bowl and he was like 6 foot flat, maybe 6'1", which is not bad, but it feels a lot different than 6'3". And so then I actually had people in my comments, like on some of those older videos saying, "Oh, he's not 6'3". What are you talking about?" I was like, well, that's what he was listed at the time. Like I can't tell the future here, people, but sometimes these measurements are significantly different in a good way or in a bad way At the quarterback position, any measurements here that we should care about?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. Xavier Legette last year was the same way. He was listed at like 6'4", and I'm taller than him, and I'm almost 6'2", so that's no way 6'4", obviously. Uh, I, Dylan Gabriel, man, 5'10". I forget his weight off the top of my head.
202. 202 pounds.
So the 202 is actually not terrible, but the 5'10" is a detriment, in my opinion. We see that, with Bryce Young, it's not really working out for him. Like, he's turned it around this second time when he got benched, but you can't really hope for that to happen to everybody. And I think the Senior Bowl really did him no favors with the fact that they put him in a QB room with Elgarazam and Chuck, who were both 6'4", 6'3". It's like he's standing next to them in these throwing drills, and he's like the odd man out. So I felt bad for him a bit in that, but it also reared its ugly head during some of the 7-on-7 stuff, especially towards the goal line where everything starts to shrink. Couple processing issues, probably couldn't tell, who was open because the D line is like 6'4", and those issues really reared its ugly head in the goal line drills.
Yeah, man. I mean, we obviously have seen some quarterbacks have NFL success as shorter guys. Drew Brees, most notably, but also Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray. So it's not a total deal breaker, but you have to be pretty good in a lot of other areas to overcome it. And I'm not sure Dylan Gabriel is that type of prospect, but we'll see. I haven't really dug into the film on him yet, but it doesn't seem like he's the type of guy with athleticism or arm talent or high-level processing to overcome some physical limitations. But let's move on. Let's get to the running back position. This is, by all accounts, the strength of the draft class. Is that what you saw down there in Mobile, and who stood out to you?
Yeah, 100%. The American team running back room in general, all those guys either were very solid or exceeded expectations to me. That room was consisted of Devin Neal, Jarquez Hunter, R.J. Harvey, Marcus Yarns, and Brashard Smith. Brashard Smith balled out, man. I'll tell you what, especially in the one-on-one receiving drills, which obviously he's a former wide receiver. He should be doing that. But, obviously not tackling to the ground, really. But that dude, even when he runs the ball, looks like there is absolutely no wasted motion in the way he plays, which I think is extremely impressive. I would say he stood out. Marcus Yarns, Delaware Blue Hens, got to represent the tri-state area here a little bit. Really came into the Senior Bowl with a chip on his shoulder, it seemed like. I like to use the analogy that good old JR from wrestling would say, and he's quicker than a hiccup. That's something that stood out. RJ Harvey crushed it. Not something he did a whole lot in college was pass catching. And I thought he looked really good in those drills. I will say, non-practice wise, something we don't really talk about all that often is intangibles, right? What you're doing when nobody's really paying attention or anything like that. Damian Martinez was the first person on the practice field every single day. When I say not like 2 minutes before everybody, I would say 10 to 15 minutes before anybody touched grass. He was out there every single day warming up. I think the national team, that was Ollie Gordon, Woody Marks, Damian Martinez, those guys weren't showcased as well. Like in practice, for whatever reason, it felt like how do I explain it? There wasn't as many drills used for the running backs with that team. For whatever reason, it was odd. But I think Martinez looked solid throughout the week. But again, it's those intangibles, man. I asked him about it. And I asked him about it in the interview, and I asked him about it when I saw him on the field for the third day. He said that, he just loves this. And that's something we want to hear, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. And it's exciting to hear. RJ Harvey, I heard he balled out this week. And I did see some flashes of the pass catching on tape. We're actually talking about him on the bonus show tonight. So if you want to hear my full thoughts on RJ Harvey, check out the bonus podcast. But yeah, he seems just pretty electric. And these drills, showed more than just flashes of receiving upside. It's like, okay, if UCF had used him in this way, he could have been an absolute weapon. So that was fun to see. And it was a fun running back group down there in Mobile. I mean, a lot of guys that are intriguing to me as prospects. Before we talk about people who stood out in a negative way, we should go to the measurements because this feels significant at the running back position, even some of the names you just mentioned. So Devin Neal, I think, really helped himself weighing in at 220. He was listed by Kansas at what, like 205?
I was going to say 2.5, 2.10 or something like that.
Like a full 15 pounds heavier, which is really good for him and his draft stock, particularly since he carried that weight and still played well at that weight at the Senior Bowl. Woody Marks, 215, is heavier than I was expecting him to weigh at, so that was a good weigh-in for him. And you mentioned Damian Martinez, 226, 5'11", 226. That's a great build for a running back. And then some of the negative ones at SMU, Brashard Smith, 195, a little lighter than you want a running back to be, even though he balled out this week, 5'9", 195. So he's a compact 195 because he's short. You also had RJ Harvey, only at 5'7", is interesting. But 207, that's decent body mass index for he's compact.
I'll send you a picture. I have him, Jarquez Hunter, Marcus Sharns, and Brashard Smith all standing next to each other. He just looks like almost like a muscle hamster compared to these guys.
Yeah, I could see that. And then Yarns, you just mentioned 189, 5'10", 189. So that, to me, out of all those guys, because he's taller, he's 5'10", he's not 5'7", and he's lighter at one. He's the lightest guy in the room at 189. It's not a deal breaker. People freaked out about this stuff with Bucky, and he's obviously been really good. But you got to be really, really good to overcome that stuff. He's a prospect that wasn't even really on my radar before this week, so I don't know.
Nobody's radar unless you're watching the Delaware Blue Hens.
We'll see, but that weigh-in is concerning for him. And then one other that might be concerning in the opposite direction, and maybe we'll talk about this guy when we get into who didn't help themselves this week, but 233 pounds for Ollie Gordon. Is that too big for a running back?
Listen, for a guy that I don't really think has like any sort of quickness or lateral movement to his game, to be honest with you, I watched his film. I watched his 2024 film. Now, I heard the 2023 film is all the rage, but he doesn't look he needs to lose some weight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you think of like Derrick Henry's 247, but he's just a different animal. It's like 0% body fat.
It doesn't work for everybody.
It does not work for everybody at all. And so, yeah, I'm concerned about the 233-pound weigh-in for Ollie Gordon. How did he look down there to you?
So, and I want to say this as nicest way as possible, honestly. I have no idea how he won best running back voted by the rest of the team or the rest of the players. I'm not sure how that happened, but maybe I missed something. He just didn't look. I mean, again, him and Damian Martinez are very close in size, is 7 pounds roughly. The footwork between the two of them is night and day, in my opinion, with Damian Martinez and Ollie Gordon. I think, listen, I'll let everybody else take that gamble on him.
For sure. Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you on that. I obviously will reserve my final judgment for when we dig into him for the rookie guide, which I have not done yet, but he's seeming like a guy that I'm probably going to be out on as well. Any other running backs stand out in a negative way, maybe hurt themselves this week?
No, to be honest, I really felt pretty good about all the running backs. The only one that I thought was solid that I expected more, and this isn't really a detriment, like you went and did what you should do and have a good week, is Devin Neal. I thought he'd be a little quicker, if that makes sense, or a little faster. But again, when he cooked them on that wheel route, I was like, okay, there it is. But everything didn't look like that. And I wouldn't call him a faller. I wouldn't call him a riser. He just stayed steady, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I wonder if some of that was he put on weight to weigh in at 220, knowing that that's what NFL teams wanted to see out of him, and if that maybe wasn't his playing weight, because he looks really fast on tape.
Mhm.
Um, Great change of direction guy. So yeah, curious to see if he weighs in at the combine, if he's still at that 220, how he does in combine drills, if he is coming in at 220, that type of thing. But yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back with the wide receivers and tight ends. So if you're not already subscribed to CouchScouts.com, it is a treasure trove of resources to help you dominate your rookie draft and ultimately dominate your dynasty league. We have all 22 film in there. Not on the offensive rookies, but we have some defensive rookies. We have a lot of underclassmen, Devy guys, so you can get in there and scout guys like Jeremiah Smith. Um, and our rookie guide is going to be the ultimate cheat sheet for dominating your rookie draft. We've got one-on-one team consultations and then the bonus podcast, which I just mentioned. So we're covering a lot of the sleeper names that you want to know. Like, okay, I'm hearing some buzz on Twitter for RJ Harvey. Should I buy into the hype? Sign up at couchscouts.com, listen to our bonus podcast. We got you covered. Or if you don't want to listen to the podcast, read it in our rookie guide. We're going to be very thorough and we're going to give you everything you need to know on the class. So you can get that for as little as $5 a month, and you can save 15% by signing up for an annual subscription. So check it out, couchscouts.com. All right, Mike, let's get down the stretch here. Two more positions, the wide receivers and the tight ends. We'll start with wide receiver. Same question. Who stood out to you in a positive way from this Senior Bowl group?
So I think we are, how we called this class weak or not as strong as previous years and everything like that. I think we're going to be pretty happy with some of the second, third round guys in the NFL draft. The biggest one from me, because I didn't have a whole lot of film on him, was Jalen Royals from Utah State.
Mm-hmm.
He, for the first 2 days, first of all, he didn't come in at 100%. That was all the buzz around the Senior Bowl, was that he wasn't healthy. He wasn't at full go. He came and he still balled out. It was pretty much uncoverable all week. I think if he was at 100%, I don't think he would have lost any reps. He was and he was showing some physicality too, which was nice to see with contested catch balls and everything like that. He came in at what, 5'11", 202 or something like that. So he's a well-built running
210, actually.
210. So that's a well-built
Yeah,
wide receiver.
it is.
He kind of gives me, and maybe this doesn't seem like the sexy comp or anything like that, Khalil Shakir just kind
Okay.
of does all the dirty work. Good route runner, really good after the catch. That's not something you're really going to see down at the Senior Bowl because, especially in the one-on-one drills. But
Right.
again, this is a dude I really, really like, and I think he is going to be a second-round pick in the NFL draft.
Okay. I like that call out. I also heard, and you can confirm if this is true, but I heard that Jalen Noel dominated down at Senior
He
Bowl.
did.
Is that
Yeah, he did. He definitely did. He had a really good week. This is the guy I think me and your co-host went back and forth with, Rupert, I believe it was. On because he's high on him as well on Twitter.
Yes, he is.
I gave him the comp of Tyler Lockett, and you could kind of see that during the Senior Bowl. Really quick, really fast, more competitive in the 50-50 balls than you would imagine at a guy his size, especially getting vertical. I was impressed with him. He definitely, I would say, to be honest, I think Royals to me was the best wide receiver on the field, but I think the consensus is Noel because I have high expectations for Noel. You know what I mean? Because I really liked him. Him and Royals, I had them at like that wide receiver 9 through 11 section in my ranks before going in. But because I didn't have enough film on Royals, I had him at like 12. But seeing him up close and doing what I expected him to do and look as good as he did at 80%, I bumped him a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, and Noel is 5'9", 196 is how he weighed in. So a little bit on the short side, but
He's a
pretty strong frame. I mean, 196 is a respectable weight.
He's a dog,
For
man.
sure.
A DAWG dog. You can see it.
There you go. Dynasty dogs right there. Well, anybody stand out in a negative way?
Uh, Arian Smith, I think that's how you say his name. I
from
expected better.
Georgia.
From Georgia. Everybody was talking about this electric playmaker. A deep ball threat can make people miss. Um, he had trouble tracking the ball a few times. And again, this is like, it's hard to gauge a lot of these dudes when it comes to playing with like brand new people. Obviously, he's never caught a pass from Jackson Dart before. He's never caught a pass from Jalen Monroe before, so I'm sure that's
Uh-huh.
awkward. Drops, though, were a big thing for him, and that's going to get you off the field, especially when you're going to be a late,
Mhm.
probably day 3 guy. You need to be able to come up with it.
Yeah, let's shift. We got some big bodied guys here, and sometimes the route running really stands out. Those smaller route running types stand out at the Senior Bowl because of these one-on-one drills. What about these big guys? Jaden Higgins, 6'3", 217 pounds. Pat Bryant, 6'2", 208. Jack Beck, 6'1", 214. Like who stood out amongst the big fellas?
Beck, I would say, was the best contested catcher of them all. He probably had the play of the week in a 50-50 ball situation. Unfortunately, I didn't have it on film. It was one of those where I put my phone down for 5 seconds and the big play happens.
Mm.
And again, for a dude who's going through a tragedy like himself, his brother was killed during the attacks on New Orleans, to come down and ball out. Um, it speaks to his character as well and how tough and how much he wants this. So he's a dude to root for, and he'd had a really nice week. He also caught the game-winning touchdown in the Senior Bowl game as well.
Yeah, I saw
Um,
that.
yeah, which is awesome for him. Jaden Higgins, like you mentioned, he kind of looked like what I expected. Quicker footwork than you would imagine for a dude like 6'3". I wouldn't say, we kind of give Tet McMillan, the big dude can make people miss. Jaden Higgins isn't far off from him. Not make you miss, leave DBs in their dust, kind of like that with their footwork and the way they run their routes and everything like that. I don't think Jaden Higgins is far off from him, to be
Okay.
honest with you. The big thing for him is they cut through a couple contested catch balls he didn't come down with. I expected him to win those because that's kind of like his calling card almost, especially being at that size. He had a couple drops the first day. He did clean it up. The first day I was like, oh man, I don't really see it. And then he cleaned it up. Again, you can't go everything off the first day because I think a lot of these guys are rusty.
Yeah, all right. Let's talk measurements, and I've obviously been listing a few as we go along, but if we can't talk measurements and not mention Tez Johnson coming in at 156 pounds. I mean, that is, you want to talk about light in the pants, man. That dude, um, my reaction as soon as I saw it was he's dead in the water. I'm not
Mhm.
interested. It doesn't matter. And then by all accounts, he had a pretty great week, was cooking guys in the one-on-one drills. One guy that comes to mind that this was true of a few years ago was Tank Dell. Was a Senior Bowl guy. As soon as he weighed in, I was like, dead, not interested, dead to me. And then he just cooked all week long. I got into the film. I loved the film. I was like, okay, I'll take a shot on this guy as an outlier. He surprised me. Do you think Tez Johnson can be that type of guy, like a Tank Dell, that in spite of being 156 pounds, we might still have some interest for Dynasty? Or what do you think?
So for sure, I just there's an article coming out for Toilets and Titles on my recap of this, and the first sentence for Tez Johnson for me is "size be damned." Um, this dude, this dude was tough to cover the entire week, just with speed and quickness, and he was just very very electric and very explosive in his routes. That release, different releases, he was just absolutely cooking DBs, even the ones that were trying to press up, which obviously on 156 pounder you're probably going to do. Try to get into his frame, make him go off his routes. They were having trouble doing that to him. He was just tough to catch. He's a guy I'm going to take flyers on because one, I think he's not going to get the best of draft capital. Probably third, fourth round, kind of like a Tank Dell. I think Tank Dell was a third round pick, if I'm not
He was.
mistaken. I think he's going to get very similar draft capital. Um, I think people are going to be thrown off by the size, kind of like Tank Dell was in our rookie drafts. As long as an NFL team uses him to his strengths and not have him blocking on goal line like they did with Tank Dell, I think
Oh,
I'm
hurt
pretty.
my heart, man.
Yeah, he is like a series of unfortunate events, Tank Dell.
I know. I
Uh,
know.
but I think if he goes to the right situation, obviously, I think the no duh landing spot for him would be, Denver with Bo Nix. But I think that scheme would really, Sean Payton's offensive scheme would really showcase what he can do. And especially I don't know if you've turned on the film yet for him. Um, Yards after catch is something really impressive for him as well.
Yeah, I have not turned on the film yet, so I'm interested because Senior Bowl was not what sold me on Tank Dell. It was the film later on.
Mm.
I was watching the film. I was like, wow, there's some special change of direction, explosiveness, route running on this film. So, be interested to see if I see the same thing from Tez. Um, let's get to the last position, the tight end position, one that often doesn't get a lot of publicity and can be hard to figure out from a fantasy perspective, but seems like there were some guys that really stood out there at the Senior Bowl. Who jumped out to you?
So I will say in my notes for Elijah Arroyo, it says a wide receiver playing tight end. That is what I saw this week. I believe it was his first route on 101. He got deep. He kind of had a step on the defender, which was good to see from a tight end. That's not something that you would completely expect a boundary vertical throw and actually have a step on somebody. And not only did he win like that, he won bully ball too. And I really like seeing that from my athletically gifted tight ends. Elijah Arroyo definitely made himself some money this week. I'm trying to figure out where I want to rank him. He was my tight end 6 coming in. I want to bump him up, but I think this tight end class as a whole is very good. And I think we're going to be not pleasantly happy, very happy with the tight end draft picks we have this year. Mason
Yeah,
Taylor,
it seems
another
like
dude
it's a deeper class.
for
Like
sure.
last year, there's no Brock Bowers, but there's a number of guys that I think could contribute on fantasy rosters more so than last year, even though there's not that one elite guy.
Yeah, for sure. Mason Taylor, another dude that jumped out. But who I really want to talk about is a guy you and I have talked about before, just through text messages and stuff. Harold Fanning Jr. His first day, he's my tight end too going into it. The first day, to be honest with you, had me shivering in my timbers a little bit. I was like,
Yeah,
oh boy, this is not this is not looking good. He did not look clean. He didn't look ready. He looked slow. Day 2 and day 3, man, it was a completely different ball game for him. And sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, you've got to remember a lot of these guys haven't played in over a month. His last game was towards the end of December. So I know you're practicing and everything like that, and you're getting ready for these moments, but there's nothing like live rounds coming at you. And he stepped up in competition, obviously coming from the MAC into the Senior Bowl now, so
yeah,
the competition's bumped up. But he looked really good day 2 and day 3. Clean breaks, caught a nice one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. Love to see that. Looked a little faster day 2 and day 3, which is something we want to see. He's big up here. Nino pointed that out to me. He's big up in the chest area.
yeah,
Had a few good blocks in run blocking. Pass blocking, though, I will say that's something he's going to have to work
yeah.
on. But run blocking is solid, and that's going to keep him on the field.
Well, I was curious to hear what you were going to say about him because I know you love the guy and we've texted about it, like you said. Here's what PFF had to say. This was from one of their articles, Risers and Fallers at each position, and they've got Harold Fannin as a faller at the tight end position. It says, unfortunately, he lagged a bit behind several other prospects and was unable to dominate at the same level he did at Bowling Green. Fannin wasn't explosive out of his route breaks and didn't consistently separate from man coverage. He couldn't quite excel as a blocker either, which could be the expectation for a 238-pounder. By the end of the week, he was taking repetitions at fullback with the hopes of expanding his versatility Considering his lack of size and the lesser level of competition he played at Bowling Green, Fannin needed to dominate as a receiver, and he didn't quite accomplish that mission.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with day one. I would 100% agree with all of that. But day 2 and 3, he looked different. And
Okay.
sorry, my dogs are very excited about that piece you just read there. They have a bit of arguments with that. It's hard to say he didn't look good. I thought he looked really good day 2 and day 3. I will say the part where you said he couldn't separate himself from the other tight ends, though it felt like Mason Taylor and Arroyo rose, obviously, and Fannin kind of was like, yes, I agree, he's a riser, but those two rose up to a different level. That, if you get what I'm saying, like he's
Yeah.
my tight end too, Fannin, and I'm still pretty confident there. He might drop
Okay.
to 3. I'm going to stick with what I saw on film, like kind of like what we
All
mentioned
right.
before, right? I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. But Arroyo and
I
Taylor,
respect it.
yeah, Arroyo and Taylor, it, it was, how do I explain this? They showed out, and it was kind of like, all right, well, where's Fannin now? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't down there like you, but I was surfing some clips on Twitter, and Arroyo really popped. I mean,
He did.
I saw some of the cut ups of him in these one-on-one drills, and it was like, okay, he's running routes like this at 6'4", 251 pounds. Like, oh man, that is very intriguing. So yeah, definitely a guy that I'm excited to dig into the tape and have my eye on as a tight end prospect in this class.
He may have jumped Gunnar Helm for me, Arroyo. Gunnar was my tight end 4. He opted out of the Senior Bowl probably because Texas went long into the season, and that
Yeah,
makes sense, right? And he had a good season, so he probably was like, "Look, I don't really need to risk further injury or anything like that."
sure.
Um, So Arroyo may have jumped him because I liked Arroyo's film. I loved Gunnar Helm's film as well. So just seeing that up live in person, kind of like what I wanted to see in Arroyo, gave him a little bump over Helm for me.
Okay. Yeah, and the last thing, I guess, measurements for the tight ends, they're all pretty respectable. Brenning Stool at 234, 6'5", 234 is a little bit thin, a little bit small. 238 for Fannin at 6'3". It's workable but small for a tight end. Then most everybody else was 240 plus, which you want to see. So, anything you would add on the measurements that stuck out to you?
The dude, I can't remember his name. The dude from UCLA looks like an absolute unit of a human
Oh
being.
yeah, I don't know
Uh,
how you pronounce it. Molokai
yeah,
Matavao, 6'5", 265.
yeah, that is a terrifying human being, to be
That's a
honest with you.
mountain of a man.
He's
Can
going to
he
be
play though? Like, I mean, does he catch passes?
He didn't. He had an week. You know what I mean? Kind of like not
Yeah.
somebody I'm going to be taking shots on. Name's escaping me right now. If you're going to talk about like a later end dart throw, the tight end from Nebraska, whose name is
Thomas
really,
Fidone.
yeah, Fidone. Thank you. He was making some plays. He looked like he could be a decent pass catcher.
Okay.
Again, that's going to be a
6'4",
later.
241.
Yeah, that's
Name's
going to be a
escaping
later
me.
end dart throw. Yeah, for sure. Um, the measurements. I'm kind of glad Fannin came in at 238 because everything had been saying he was closer to 230 than 240. So 238 is probably a decent size. And maybe that's why day one he looked a little slower. Maybe he was just adjusting to that weight. But that dude from UCLA, I don't want to be lined up against him ever in my life.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. These are great insights. Thank you for your time, and I'm glad you got to go down there. I know you always have a blast doing that, but
You got
appreciate
to
you
go. You
sharing.
got to go one year.
Oh man, I would love to sometime. So, thanks for coming on and telling us what you saw, and we appreciate your time, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.